Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, fellow data enthusiasts. Welcome to the Data Quality Panel. My name is Thomas Benedict. I lead our partnerships, specifically our relationship with Lotame, who is one of our favorite partners. Survata is a measurement company. We measure the effectiveness of advertising, and we validate the quality of audiences. Validating the quality of audiences is why we're here today. Very similar to what Andy said, we're not focused on the scale of audiences, but rather the quality, the ROI, the success factor. So we're thrilled to sponsor this panel. A lot of our clients talk about the what, the where, the who of advertising. The what part of an ad was seen, viewability. The where was it seen, brand safety. And the who, the audiences. That's what we're here to talk about today. Now, over the past couple of years, viewability and brand safety have become ubiquitous, yet the who really lags behind. When you have a campaign targeted towards coffee drinkers, auto intenders, young mothers, puppy owners, how do you know it's actually reaching those people? Cookies expire, puppies turn into dogs. I mean, how do you know? When you go to the grocery store, would you buy something if you had no idea what was inside the package or the quality of what was inside the package? Can we similarly expect data buyers to continue to buy things with no purview into the composition or the accuracy of what they're buying? I don't think so, and I know Lotame agrees with us. And that's why we've been so excited to partner with them and bring audience validation solutions to our mutual clients. And we know there's incredible advancements to come in the next year. Finally, we like to geek out on this stuff, so if you want to talk about data quality, you want to talk about audience validation, please come talk to myself, talk to Chris Kelly, our CEO, who's going to be on this panel, or talk to Afan Sheikh, one of our account executives who's here. We'd love to talk about it. We geek out on data quality and validation all the time. For me personally, this topic never dies. It just gets broken down by age and gender. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to our impressive panel and our moderator, Ryan Rolf, VP of Data Solutions at Lotame. Thank you. Enjoy the panel.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Survata. It's probably never easy following Andy all up here, so brave soul, appreciate that. And but we have a great panel here today, and I think we can also throw a little bit of fuel in the fire with a great topic of data quality and how does that translate to ROI. So Survata and Lotame have been great partners, and in partnership with them, to kind of set the stage, pun intended, that we recently conducted a survey, and we're going to share these results following the conference with everybody, but 60% of the marketers that we did survey are concerned with the quality of data that's available from data providers and sellers. So I think this kind of helps us and will lead our conversation here. So I'd like to invite everybody up, and I'm thrilled to introduce the experts that we have here today to discuss our topics of data quality. So with that, we have Alex Andreyev, VP of Partner Integrated Investment at Worldwide. We have Chris Kelly, founder and CEO of Survata. We have Joyce Lee, Director of Global Data Sales and Strategy at Oath. And we have Mirshak, VP Data Architecture and Platforms at Spark Foundry. Please join me in welcoming ourselves. What's up, guys? How you doing? Hi.
Hello.
Let's chat data, quality, and ROI. So the way I think we wanted to kick this off was we sort of now know who you all are, where you work. But I think what would really help us here is just sort of let us know a little bit about the role that you guys have, your day-to-day, and sort of how does data quality right now kind of come up in your conversations, whether with your team, your clients, so on. Chris, you want to start off?
Sure. Chris Kelly, founder and CEO of Survata. You just heard our overview from my colleague Thomas, so I'll skip that. I spend a lot of time talking to clients every day, brands, agencies, publishers, and platforms about data quality, audience quality. It's increasingly becoming a hot topic. We hear people probably talking about it 5 times more than they did the last couple years, and really like what we've seen from Lotame in terms of having the guts to say what Andy just said on stage in terms of it's not about scale anymore, it's about quality. And that traditionally has been the opposite of what you've heard from data sellers in a world where 20 million cookies makes 2x the money that 10 million cookies makes. Providers have just naturally been pushed to scale. So it's very exciting to see the quality conversations finally bubble up, and excited to hear how different brands and agencies and partners think about it.
Yep. Totally. Joyce.
My name's Joyce Lee. I'm with a company called Oath, which is the merger of Yahoo and AOL, which happened almost a year ago. So I've been working with Ryan in particular, actually, for a very long time. Came from a startup, Adapt TV, so programmatic video. And my role, in fact, has changed from making sure that the third-party data vendors that we work with are of high quality to my current role now, which is harnessing all the first-party signals that's within the Oath family. We are an ad tech provider. We are a publisher of things such as Yahoo Sports and Huffington Post, as well as we're owned by Verizon. We actually have a carrier data consortium that is global. So merging these signals together, and I guess that leads up to our expression of quality at Oath is knowing the ingredients that go in. So I'm a foodie. I like to cook. So sourcing the best ingredients is often the start of a good meal. And then you need to have the right techniques, which is the technology in our world. And then at the end of the day, you need your critics, whether it's friends or family or I don't know, competitions for some of the people out there, to actually benchmark you and see if it actually delivers up to what was prescribed. So I guess my approach is very humanist in terms of data quality.
Thank you, Joyce. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mirshak. I oversee the data architecture and platforms team at Spark. We're a relatively new group within the agency. We started about 3 years ago, and it was born out of this need to have a dedicated group of experts to dive into client data, second-party data, third-party, to understand those ingredients, to ask publishers, to ask data partners the tough questions. Where are they sourcing the data? How fresh is it? How recent? What's the methodology? What partnerships do they have that's also sourcing the data? And that from a third-party data perspective, that's kind of where we started, but more and more we're seeing us move up the funnel a little bit to help clients realize the value in their first-party data. We have 90 clients in our roster, and half of them are much smaller than the, kind of the bigger ones we have here in New York. And our media clients don't know the state of their first-party data, and so they need help even cleaning up their first-party data, getting it into a usable format so that we can then leverage it from a media perspective and tie it to our second and third-party data partnerships as well. So really, from a data quality perspective, that's what we do, and that's what we've been doing at Spark pretty successfully. And the more and more engagements that we're involved in with the clients, the deeper we go. So we're able to help them formulate those strategies at the start, and then it affects, of course, the ROI, the success of the media campaigns and initiatives.
Alex Andreyev. I oversee the audience-based buying for CocaCola account at Universal McCann. So we work with, we both oversee the reason why the title is integrated investment is because we don't break down investment to channels. Rather, we think about how do we approach users and target users wherever they are, right? And for a group of brands like Coca-Cola that has a ton of different portfolios, right? I sometimes jokingly say, well, my audience across the portfolio is anyone with a mouth, right? So we just need to target users based on the right product. So we work not only closely with Coca-Cola and their tech investments on their side, but also with second and third party data providers to validate where are we seeing gaps into how to drive better ROI, right? Because it's not just about the eyeballs and impressions anymore. It's CPG companies that feel under pressure and they're going into a more DR type tactics to see results. So we work really closely with data partners, and Oath is one of our partners that we see a lot of success with, by truly understanding what goes inside of the data set, and not just sort of, hey, I have a diet soda drinker. Well, what does that really mean?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think those are all great points. And I think, Michelle, you've touched it, Alex, you have, Andy touched on it as well. First-party data, now we have sharing, we have second-party data, we also have third-party data. So I think what would be great, too, is, so how do these sources kind of, in your mind, since we're talking about data quality, correlate to data quality? And when you're talking with a client, whether they have a lot of data or they don't have a lot of data, where do you guys see the line of quality go when you're talking about their first or second or third party data? And as we're a panelist, everyone can jump right in and we'll keep it light.
Yeah, I mean, from a Coca-Cola standpoint, right? Coca-Cola has some interesting touch points with the consumers, right? It's at events, it's things like My Coke Rewards. Coca-Cola has the app called Sip and Scan, right? So we're trying to get a data point. We're trying to provide some sort of value back when a user communicates with us and our brands. So that data set is the number one of importance in terms of what do we think and what do we know about the users and how does that impact our next campaign or our next iteration of targeting. And we're starting to think about it a lot more from not just a specific campaign. Oh, we relaunched Diet Coke and Coke Zero Sugar last year. What does that mean? But rather, what's a portfolio play, right? Just like you mentioned how audiences change all the time, right? We're not going to buy stale cookies. Our users go through different life stages, right? If I'm getting married at the end of the year, right, I might start drinking Diet Coke, right? And it's kind of how do we transition that, and how do we really think about our user? So to be honest, I think and based on my experience, most advertisers haven't fully tapped into the value of their first-party data. And then when you have really good partners like Oath and others in the space, your second-party data, you might pay for it, but it becomes almost your first-party data because it's so transparent, it's so easily configured, and then we could test our assumptions on how to target and whether it will perform successfully or not. And rather than doing A/B tests, we're trying to figure out A/B tests between tactics and segments rather than partners, right? And then, which is why we do so much work upfront to evaluate and validate all the partners that we work with.
We actually, so we're working with partners like and Spark. One of the most frequent requests we're getting now is actually to give you further insights on audience data. As you mentioned, that most advertisers have not harnessed or mined or taxonomized their own CRM data as deeply as it could be. That's okay, we got to start somewhere. And so, yeah, that's definitely a very frequent request, even before the stage of how do I put this audience on an RFP.
I would add that we don't necessarily see a degradation of quality. There is performance, against first, second, and third party. We do monitor performance across those because that just helps inform future buys or optimization opportunities. But there's a place for each type of data in any given campaign or marketing initiative. A client's data is one of the most valuable assets that they could have, but it has gaps, right? And so we need to enter into these strategic partnerships when it comes to second-party data, certainly, or working with the third-party data providers to build out the custom segments that make the most sense for our clients. We test them, we look at them over time, and we get smarter about it over time as well. And so quality isn't just first-party data, but it's about being smart about the applications of the second and third-party data.
Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, to answer part of your question of what we hear clients saying, we've heard some helpful distinctions of what quality means when we work with brands and agencies. So quality can mean transparency, quality can mean accuracy, or quality can mean performance. And hopefully you have all of those. And I think to build on Joyce's point, transparency is the first step, which is the food labeling or nutrition labeling. I think the ARF has also used that analogy about nutrition labeling. Well, you want to have the guidelines of how old is this data? Is it modeled? How is it collected? Is it observed? How was the model built? So that's just being transparent about what you're buying. But then the next step is was it what it says it is on the label? To carry the food analogy, if I'm told I'm buying organic peas, how do I know it's actually organic? And that's kind of where the accuracy and validation layer comes in. And then, of course, the gold standard is performance. Does it actually drive the outcome you want? Which is hard to measure on every single campaign. Not every campaign will have a sales lift study or a brand lift study. So that's why you need those upstream measurement pieces to be confident it's transparent, be confident it's accurate. So I think that's helpful. That's something that we didn't hear a lot of conversation around a few years ago, just kind of this monolithic quality discussion. And now we've seen brands and agencies get a lot more advanced, which is great to hear. And Lotame's been part of these conversations too in terms of what are we actually talking about when we say quality.
Yeah, it was a great point. It was definitely a topic I wanted to touch on, which is, you definitely hear all the time, the data worked or the data didn't work. And so performance is very key, and obviously at the end of the day, the clients have to be happy and there has to be some performance. So I think your food analogy was great. I'd like to kind of touch on it though. So for you guys too, is there any one prevailing factor there? Is it quality as accuracy, quality as transparency, performance? Are they all together? What would you guys say if you're speaking with the data provider, and we have a lot of data companies, data owners, buyers here, how would you talk across those three mediums to those clients in terms of what's important?
For us, a lot of it comes down to performance. If something is or isn't performing, we want to dig into why, right? And we can only do that if there's transparency in what we're actually buying. And so that's what we're there for, right? We're there to kind of go below the surface and understand what are those signals that are performing for this particular campaign, and how is it different from the last campaign that maybe it didn't perform. So I think it's certainly not just one of them, but I do think it starts with performance, because ultimately that's what we're driving for our clients, is whatever those outcomes are. And sometimes it's hard to understand what those outcomes are. They don't even know what success means sometimes, but that's what we're there for.
And with so much data, I think just to parlay on that, do you feel that the clients, feel that there's enough room to test first, second, third, and they're open to trying each one? Because there's a ton of data out there, as we all know. So how do your clients then, for performance to get it, give those tests?
Yeah, I'd say for our clients right now more than ever, we're seeing a stronger appetite, because they're so hungry to continue to drive successes or prove out the value of the platforms that they've invested in. So they're eager to test, and sometimes, of course, it has to be, with some rigor around how the test is being performed. But I do find that right now there's a lot of hunger to figure out what that right model is and dive deeper.
Yeah, I would probably say, thankfully we're not just talking about retargeting anymore, right? First-party data goes way beyond that. So as we think about even things like modeling, when we talk to, whether it's partners or other data companies, everyone wants to drop their pixel, model your audiences for you, and then, your life is going to be amazing. You don't need to buy anything ever again, right? Nice in theory, but that's not the way we approach it. We know the data sets that we have. It's much easier. So unlike a DR, right? No one sees an ad and buys it, right away on CocaCola.com, right? We do have some e-com sales, but that's not the majority part of our business today. So when we think about, okay, well, how does this impact long-term, right? How do we measure when we do have, a delayed sales results lift, and what can we integrate with to get a closer, more real-time impact analysis? That's very important. So we set up tests within our campaigns as they're running, right? We might not necessarily change the parameters of the test or who we're trying to reach, but as we're thinking about, okay, we have two different data sets. One is modeled using our own methodology. One is modeled using X, Y, and Z factors within our first-party data. And then there's a second party data layer in there. Let's say it's oaths, search retargeting, or behavioral on site, right? We throw all of that in there, and we try to understand not only what's the media impact and engagement with the ads, but we also try to figure out how can we measure each tactic and what's the incremental sales lift that it had or not. And we're getting closer. It's still not perfect. I think CPGs are still a step or two away from that real DR engine. But from everything that we're seeing between all the partners that we're working with and all the major shifts that are happening in e-com, we're maybe 2 quarters away from having some sort of DR type solutions.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that Alex and Michelle as well are both some degree of comfort with modeling. I have definitely heard from advertisers who see modeling as a hindrance to accuracy. It can be, sure, but as all advertisers will tell us that, well, this segment was really good, I want more of it. It's like, where am I going to do that? Like, breed some humans? Like, it's not really going to happen. Like, it's something, no, there needs to be a technology injection somewhere in there. With the GDPR coming in, one of the things that's been asked is that you have to be able to describe the algorithm that you're using for modeling. So some of that transparency with this black box of how do I get more of this segment is going to be, hopefully, it's a little less scary for people to go under.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a balance between at what point is it not worth buying or modeling even further out? At which point, maybe we've conquered every diet soda drinker in the world. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Can I ask them a question? Not to steal your job, but a question from the agency perspective. How do you guys have conversations with clients when there's a longer-term customer journey, a longer-term sale, where you're not getting next month's sales data, and maybe categories like automotive or luxury? How do you validate, or how do you look at data performance when you're not going to get next month's sales data to do that? Do you look at more mid-funnel goals?
I guess it's more of a like a CPG type of question. So it really depends on a brand, right? So a brand like CocaCola, we don't necessarily need any more awareness, right? We're the category leader, and Coca-Cola products are category leaders in most places, right? There's some smaller brands that are up and coming. So there are two ways that we do this. We, one, measure, there's the validator that comes at, quarterly or whatever, depends on CPG, it could come at different times, that sort of correlates media directly to sales. There are, NCS, DLX studies for offline purchase behavior products, and now we're starting to see, especially a lot of tech companies and DSPs are starting to invest into closer relationships with the DLX and NCS of the world, and there's a few others out there that are feeding more real-time store-level information and SKU-level sales. I think there's some challenges around scale there and accuracy and quality, but we think that that's at least a first step to getting that benchmark. Hey, we've invested more in tactic B. Are we seeing incremental or sales lift? It's not necessarily always incremental, but at least as directionally, we could start optimizing it, using it that way.
Yeah, the CPG clients that we have, a lot of them have been more of the early adopters of DMP technologies and are more eager to test data providers because they're looking for that. They're so starved for data, right? So IRI, DLX, other companies like Ibotta, right? So we're trying to get closer, but there's of course scale, or there's always it's modeled, or it's panel-based. But they're the ones that are eager to test, and from that we can at least go directional or springboard that into future initiatives. But then on the flip side of that, we have e-commerce clients, e-commerce media clients, who think their sole job is just to get someone into the front door, right? So even though for them we actually can tie that back to an actual sale, they're not grabbing that bull because they don't see it as their job, and so we have education issues on both sides of the industry spectrum, even if the data is there.
Yeah, there's degrees of proxies that we've seen people express, key landing pages, very classic sort of stuff. Foot traffic studies seems to be when it comes to the automotive piece, you're probably going to do a test drive. So if you have walked into a dealer, that's probably stronger than booking a test drive because we don't know whether you showed up or not.
Yeah, I think it was great. And if I just chime in on one thing, is that the fact that everyone here was receptive and open to modeling. I think we've seen that as another piece that's changed over the years, just where scale at all costs was table stakes for a while and you had to get there. But now, to the point where people are comfortable with modeling, if you can go through with what's in there, certainly with some of the work with Survata, we find, you find that good truth set, which, as Andy alluded to earlier, GDPR, it might be slimming down of data. You'll find the good truth sets, and then you'll also probably have to have some trusted partners that you can append that to when you do some modeling and find other data with there. So that's certainly a position that hopefully the data companies can continue to work with you guys on and modeling out and finding those insights along the way. So one topic here, that we had to do. We're a data panel. I don't think we could have one today if we don't talk about GDPR or Facebook. So we flipped the coin backstage to decide which one we wanted to do. We came up with Facebook. And so obviously decision there, partner categories, removing throughout the year, third-party data coming out of Facebook. Alex, as you mentioned backstage, it wasn't that it's gone forever, it's just saying kind of bring your own data. Now they're saying you as the advertiser, bring your data into custom audiences, and then you can use it. So my question to you guys is, do you foresee this as sort of changing the dynamic that data providers and buyers and clients change that relationship, and how does that evolve now that a decision like Facebook is made?
Yeah, I think it's more of an ownership discussion, right, with Facebook, especially the way at least the legal paperwork is coming out to be. The concern here is now because the ownership, whereas before you could go to Facebook, just like you could go to DSP or any DMP and say, yeah, let's buy all moms, right? Now you actually have to own that data, and if you're buying the data, and if you're an advertiser or an agency and you're taking responsibility for how you're going to market to purchase media against, you really need to know what you're buying. You really need to know how you receive that data, whether it's quality data, right? Because you're taking ownership of it. So if there's an issue, hey, that was Coca-Cola's data, right? So, and I think that's the stance. It really puts more of the ownership and making sure. I mean, luckily for us, we've went down the data validation strategy in mid of last year just to make sure that we know, and we actually cut our data costs in half, right? By focusing more on uses of first-party data and actually knowing what we're buying and how. So I don't think it's a significant limitation on advertisers that already know what they're buying. It might be a steep learning curve for those that are sort of, picking whatever segment's available on Facebook or platforms.
Yeah, I like it, to be honest. We have some of our more sophisticated clients are asking our team to normalize the audiences that are being activated across channel. And the only way to do that is to start with, ownership and start with a single source of truth. And so if we're bringing our data into the platform, that means that it's also accessible somewhere else. And so we're able to track it better, track performance better, right? Track what those ingredients are that are going in. So it's short-term pain, but long-term gain. I mean, like I mentioned in our catch-up, social has been something that has been working so well, nobody wanted to touch it for so long, even though we were being asked to kind of operate in this, holistic audience strategy. But now it's forcing us to look at the data that's being used across the board so that we can normalize where we're able to, and like I said, we can track it better.
It does make me a little sad that, due to trust and quality and legality reasons where, a publisher, I guess a platform is shutting off third-party data. But at the same time, I completely understand that, because there's so much third-party data that's being sold out there. Validating every single one of them is really not feasible for any one company to do that heavy lifting. So the concern that I have when it comes to, Facebook shutting off this sort of data is how do we help the smaller customers that don't have the $1 million budgets? There are, mom and pop places that are just starting up. So hopefully we're able to come up with a solution to help those guys as well as the big brands who have invested in DMP infrastructures.
Awesome. And I have to ask, maybe Joyce from Oath, maybe does this look like an opportunity for other media platforms to evolve with the way they work with data? And maybe clients want to look at other platforms. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to chat with anybody out there. We sit in a very interesting middle space where we are a data seller as well as a data buyer. We very much is not we like to say that we're not a walled garden, but at some point in time there are business secrecies there. But we're probably a little bit more open than a lot of the major platforms, and with the size that we are. And also we're a new company. The entity is a year old, so I definitely see there's a lot of changes, and management is willing to test and learn even the way our business practices are. So yeah, happy to chat further.
Awesome. Well, I think we could definitely talk all day about this and various other topics, but I think we do want to wrap it up. And so I think one thing that I found summarizing this, is, as Andy kind of touched on too, is sort of all of this with data, knowing the experts, knowing the partners that you work with, the quality is going to come from working with experts and the people you trust. And that's what's going to build some success, and you trust the partners, you trust the data, and I think that's going to help. So these are some takeaways. As Alex mentioned, we really wanted people to leave today with tangible things you can go back to your company. Don't worry about jotting them down. I know we will distribute them, but we can definitely take a picture. But these were all that the panel put together. We didn't, make it up only at Lotame. So everybody inputted to what the key takeaways would be from their side as to what everyone should take away with. So thank you all for joining me up here today. I enjoyed the conversation and appreciate working with all of you. Thanks all.